Welcome to Hive Mind. This is the speaker. Today, we're going to break down part 2 of our series on burgeoning Asian bioweapons. If you missed part 1, check the description for the link to it. In this report, we will look at the SARS epidemic of 2003 and ask, what have we learned from SARS? Then we will look at the current Wuhan Coronavirus outbreak and ask, are we repeating the past? So let's dive into it. In November of 2002, an atypical form of pneumonia, referred to as severe acute respiratory syndrome, or SARS, began to spread worldwide, eventually causing the World Health Organization to announce a worldwide health threat. The first known case of SARS is believed to have occurred in Fushan, China, near Guangzhou in Guangdong province, sometime in mid-November in 2002. When first discovered, by mid-December, Chinese medical professionals notified health experts in order to diagnose the disease by early January of 2003. Health experts conducted an investigation of the unknown strange disease and submitted a report to the Provincial Health Bureau by January 27th of 2003. The report was marked as top secret, which only authorized and provincial health officials to open it. 3 days before any authorized provincial health official read the document. Then once the document was finally read, a bulletin was distributed to hospitals within the province. In compliance with the state secrets law regarding the dissemination of public health information, the public was kept in the dark about the emerging threat. Under the state secrets law, any infectious disease were classified as a state secret until the Ministry of Health authorized a public announcement. Therefore, any doctors, public officials, or journalists who were to report on the outbreak prior to authorization by the Ministry of Health would risk persecution. Consequently, a complete media blackout of the rapidly developing danger continued until February 11th, 2003, when health officials finally held a press conference on the matter. Prior to April of 2003, Chinese authorities shared very little information with the World Health Organization. The Chinese Center for Disease Control and Prevention waited until April 2003 to issue bulletins to hospitals nationwide. Experts from the World Health Organization were finally permitted by the Ministry of Health to enter China, but were not allowed access to Guangdong, the epicenter of the outbreak, until 8 days later. Another week went by before WHO officials were permitted to inspect Beijing military hospitals. While SARS spread like wildfire throughout Beijing, the public was kept unaware of its scope and severity by local authorities. Furthermore, reports from local authorities up the chain of command to higher levels were skewed over fears of being reprimanded by their superiors. All in all, the lack of transparency at every level of the Chinese government inhibited authorities from assessing the scope and severity of the outbreak in order to respond in a timely and efficient manner. The same lack of transparency, accountability, and oversight led to speculations, rumors, and panic among the Chinese population and around the world. By April of 2003, Russian infectious disease experts publicly speculated that SARS may be a man-made biological weapon. The head of Russia's epidemiological services stated that he believed the virus was a laboratory creation, explaining, "There is no vaccine for this virus. Its makeup is unclear. It has not been very widespread and the population is not immune to it." The Russian official did, however, admit that he had reservations of this theory, considering the virus was a relatively minimal mortality rate and is not very easily transmittable. The scientific consensus on the origin of the SARS outbreak, which was confirmed by the World Health Organization on April 16th of 2003, attributes the source of this strain of the coronavirus to animals. However, on April 17th of 2003, the director of the US Center for Disease Control stated that the virus didn't look like much of any of the viruses we've already had in our reference strain collection. In April of 2004, SARS escaped the Chinese Institute of Virological Laboratory in Beijing, when two researchers who were working on the virus became infected. We suspect two people, a 26-year-old female postgraduate student and a 31-year-old male postdoc, were both infected, apparently in two separate incidents, stated a World Health Organization spokesperson. In response to the 2004 incident, which emerged from the Chinese laboratory, an epidemiologist with the Hong Kong University Pasteur Research Center remarked, "Normally it's not possible to contaminate people even under level 2 confinement. If the security rules are obeyed with the appropriate hoods and so on," adding the SARS laboratory work requires level 3 confinement, which suggests there has been some mishandling of something. On May 18th of 2004, the World Health Organization announced that the virus was contained after one person died and 9 were infected. And the World Health Organization went on to state that biosafety concerns remain. The further investigation from the World Health Organization and the Chinese health officials would continue in order to determine the cause of the outbreak. Years after the 2003 SARS outbreak, which claimed the lives of 774 people, Taiwan National Security Bureau Director General informed the Legislative Committee that Chinese sources suspected the 2003 SARS incident to be a result of a biological weapon. The Security Bureau stated that in 2003 SARS period, there were deaths and injuries, and in addition, China hid the patient count, causing panic in people's hearts. At that time, insider information indicated that SARS was a biological weapon. A Chinese foreign minister official refuted the claims, stating, "These are completely groundless and irresponsible comments," adding, "Could you help me find the original source so we can find the scoundrel who spread them?" Whether the SARS outbreak of 2003 originated from the Chinese laboratory or emerged as a natural occurrence, it is clear that the lack of transparency, accountability, and oversight of the biological research conducted in Chinese laboratories with dual-use applications has fueled distrust among nations and their citizens. As to Chinese laboratory safety practices, compliance by the Chinese government with PwC regulations, and their ability to effectively prevent future outbreaks that may cause worldwide health threats. Are we repeating the past? The first known case of 2019 NCOV occurred on December 1st, 2019. On December 31st, 2019, Chinese authorities notified the World Health Organization of multiple flu-like cases in Wuhan. The patients were quarantined and the investigation as to the source commenced. Then on January 1st, 2020, a seafood market in Wuhan was identified as the potential source of the outbreak. By January 7th, Chinese authorities ruled out coronavirus strains such as SARS and MERS. Though the new strain is associated with SARS-CoV group and diagnosed the new strain as 2019 NCOV, from January 13th to January 21st, cases were reported in Thailand, Japan, South Korea, Australia, and the United States. A day later, authorities quarantined Wuhan and 2 other cities, banning all travel. By January 31st, the death toll reached 213, with 9,776 reported cases. As more countries began to report their first cases, including Mexico, Singapore, Taiwan, Germany, Cambodia, Finland, and India, on the same day, the World Health Organization declared a global health emergency. As of February 2nd, 2020, officials quarantined 17 cities in China, and the virus spread to 24 other countries. While the number of confirmed cases reported at 14,549, while the number of suspected cases neared 20,000, the death toll as of February 2nd climbed to 305. As of February 9th, the number of confirmed cases jumped to 37,558 throughout the world, in 28 countries, and the number of deaths have reached 813. Many suspect these numbers may be higher and are not being accurately reported by the Chinese government. Though officials quickly determined that the source for the outbreak came from animals such as bats, served in Huanan seafood market in Wuhan, the prestigious peer-reviewed medical journal, Lancet, reported a clinical study of the 2019 novel coronavirus, which determined that the first known case of 2019 NCOV had no direct contact with the Wuhan seafood market, further stating that none of his family members developed fever or any respiratory symptoms, and no epidemiological link was found between the first patient and later cases. Including the first patient of the original 41 cases, 14 patients had no contact with the Wuhan seafood market. The Lancet study went on to state that both SARS-CoV and MERS-CoV were believed to originate in bats, and these infections were transmitted directly to humans from market civets and dromedary camels, respectively. Extensive research on SARS-CoV and MERS-CoV has driven the discovery of many SARS-like and MERS-like coronavirus in bats. Once the genetic sequence of the 2019 NCOV became available, researchers began to investigate its genetic makeup in order to understand its origins. From their research, it was determined that the 2019 NCOV strain is most closely related to strains found in bats. Xijing Li is a coronavirus specialist at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, whose research focuses primarily on bats. She led the team of specialists who determined that this latest strain of coronavirus resembles a bat virus with 96.2% similarity, and likewise resembles the coronavirus that causes SARS with a 79.5% similarity. Xijing Li has conducted several studies at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, the first biocontaminate level 4 laboratory in China's history, which is capable of handling the world's most deadly diseases, including coronavirus. Her bio page on the Wuhan Institute of Virology site states that her major achievements, including the discovery of a number of genetically diverse bat SARS-like coronaviruses, and the antibodies of Nipah virus and Ebola virus in bats in southern China. Furthermore, it states that Xijing Li is participating in ongoing research projects, including the National Basic Research Program, the 973 program, which has supported her research into molecular mechanisms of cross-species infection and transmission of important viruses from 2011 to 2015, as well as isolation and identification of human pathogens carried by bats, distribution characteristics, genetic evolution, and their pathogenicity to humans from 2013 to 2017. Xijing Li led a team of experts at Wuhan Institute of Virology in the discovery that the genetic building blocks of SARS were found in the population of horseshoe bats. The 2017 research paper written by Xijing Li and her team, which documented the study, stated the risk of spillover into people and emergence of the disease similar to SARS is possible. The team of researchers isolated approximately 300 bat coronavirus sequences for the purposes of monitoring the virus's evolution. Just as in the case of the SARS outbreak, speculation as to the true origins of the 2019 NCOV have emerged. A former Israeli military intelligence officer who is familiar with the Chinese biological warfare program believes Wuhan Institute of Virology is connected to Beijing's secret biological weapons program, stating, certain laboratories in the institute, Wuhan Institute of Virology, have probably been engaged in terms of research and development in Chinese biological weapons, at least collaterally, yet not as principal facility of the Chinese BW alignment. In 2017, a molecular biologist at Rutgers University, Richard Ebright, criticized the new biocontaminate level 4 laboratory, stating that the excessive capacity to study the world's deadliest pathogens will lead governments to assume that there is potential for the development of bioweapons at the facility, adding, these facilities are inherently dual use. On January 30th, 2020, US Senator Tom Cotton addressed the Senate Armed Services Committee regarding China's lack of transparency about the 2019 NCOV outbreak, stating,
right now, yet China is still lying about all of this. They've been lying about it from the very beginning, and you don't need their history of lying about SARS in 2003, though it is relevant here. You just have to see what's happened over the last 2 months. We now know that the first case manifested no later than December 1, even though China didn't reveal it to the WHO until a month later on December 31st, when they continued to hide it from their own citizens. And they continued to say that it had been contained inside Wuhan. Today, it is in every single province in China. They also claimed for almost 2 months, until earlier this week, that it had originated in a seafood market in Wuhan, that locals had contracted it from animals in, say, bat soup or snake tartare. That is not the case. The Lancet published a study last weekend demonstrating that of the original 40 cases, 14 of them had no contact with the seafood market, including patient 0. As one epidemiologist said, that virus went into the seafood market before it came out of the seafood market. We still don't know where it originated. Could have been another seafood market. Could have been a farm. Could have been a food processing company. I would note that Wuhan also has China's only biosafety level 4 super laboratory that works with the world's most deadly pathogens, to include, yes, coronavirus.
The address listed for Professor Shi Jingli's work, conducted at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, is just 16 kilometers from the presumed epicenter of the outbreak, Huanan seafood market, bolstering these speculations. Adding to the suspicions, a scientist working for the Canadian government at the National Microbiology Lab, plus her husband and her students from China, were expelled from the laboratory in July of 2019 over a possible policy breach. The Canadian government has launched an investigation into the expelled scientist, Jiang Guoqiu. He was an expert in the study of Ebola virus, made at least 5 trips to China from 2017 to 2018, including to the Wuhan Institute of Virology Level 4 laboratory, as well as to meetings with colleagues in Beijing. Jiang Guoqiu also resides on the same Virological Sinica editorial board, from which Shi Jingli of Wuhan Institute of Virology is the editor-in-chief. Furthermore, amidst the 2019 NCOV virus outbreak, indictments were unsealed for a Harvard University professor and 2 Chinese nationals who were charged in 3 separate China-related cases. The indictment against the Harvard professor Charles Leiber alleges that the professor lied about his involvement in the Thousand Talents plan and affiliation with WUT, Wuhan University of Technology. Leiber's work has focused primarily on nanotechnology and brain science. Yang Qing was indicted for falsely identifying as a student while studying at Boston University Department of Physics, Chemistry, and Biomedical Engineering from October 2017 to April 2019, and lying about her ongoing military service at the National University of Defense Technology, a top military academy directed by the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party. Zhao Songjing's indictment states that he conducted cancer cell research at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center in Boston from September 4, 2018 to December 9, 2019. The indictment against Zhang alleges that Zhang stole 21 vials of biological research and attempted to smuggle them out of the United States aboard a flight destined for China. The timing of these indictments amidst the 2019 NCOV outbreak is curious. There is no known direct connection between these indictments and the outbreak itself. The recent events surrounding these investigations and indictments do, however, underscore a potential for threats against national security. Regardless of whether the SARS outbreak of 2003 or the novel coronavirus outbreak of 2019 were man-made or natural occurrences, the lack of transparency, accountability, and oversight by the Chinese authorities as to their burgeoning biological weapons program has fueled speculations. Let us hope, for the sake of the Chinese citizens who have been devastated the most by these epidemics, as well for the global population, that the Chinese government has finally learned from the grave mistakes in decades past. That concludes part 2 of burgeoning Asian bioweapons. If you'd like to see part 1, check the link in the description below. To read more about this report and other reports like this, check the description. If you like this report, please share, like, subscribe, and click that bell. We'll see you back next time right here on Hive Mind.